Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast, your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. Our guest today is Jordan Urbs. He moved his family from the United States to El Salvador, and he's calling in live from El Salvador today, right? So we want to catch up on what he's working on. SovStudios, that's the name,
That's
right?
it.
Of the
Yeah,
group,
that's what
SovStudios on Twitter.
yeah.
And I know you recently met up with Murph's Life just the other day.
Yeah, we might have a lot of synergistic collaboration going on with Murph's Life. He's doing some really cool work here that's very compatible with our mission. So yeah.
Awesome. Previous podcast guest, the audience can go back and listen to our episode with Murph's Life, which just came out like a week ago. But yeah, Jordan, I would love to kind of crack into your story, how you decided to move down to El Salvador. I'm sure a lot of people are really interested in that country. And I think pretty much anyone on Twitter who follows Bukele and all the amazing things has at least considered it, right? So this episode is for the considerers.
Yeah, I always say they have great PR. El
Mhm.
Salvador. They're really doing a great job at rebranding this country. And Twitter is where you see that the best. But yeah, so my wife is Argentine, and I've spent cumulatively a few years in Latin America. I did a lot of traveling when I was younger, and then started my family in Argentina. So we have a relationship with Latin America. Costa Rica and Nicaragua were the first places I ever visited on my own when I was 20, 21, and really set me on a certain path. And I always was eager to come back to Central America. I went back to Mexico, but I never really came back to Central America. And a lot's changed. That was like 15 years ago that I first went to Central America. And now, if El Salvador is any indication, things have just changed a lot from the very raw and undeveloped countries I remember 15 years ago.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
we're recording this in October 2024. It'll come out in a couple weeks. When did you first get down there?
So we just got here in June. I moved in the middle of June. My family met here at the beginning of July. We've been building our headquarters for SovStudios since the end of June, and really just been grinding, working really hard. There's a lot of energy going on here, especially if you're in the Bitcoin space, but not necessarily limited to Bitcoin. I think the Bitcoin ethos kind of creates a lot of community spirit uh, amongst the people that are into it. And I don't know how much you're into Bitcoin or your guests or your audience, so we don't really have to get into it. But I would say Bitcoin is definitely one of the magnetic fields of attraction that people come to El Salvador for.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
for sure. Our podcast is sponsored by Bit Refill.
oh,
So
okay,
you're probably familiar with them.
of course, everyone uses Bitrefill here.
Good, good. And people can use the code My Latin Life to get $10 in free Bitcoin or something like that. So if
Oh, I'm
people
gonna write
haven't
that
signed up
down.
for Bit Refill, that's the code. And there's a ad read like halfway through the episode that'll tell you guys more.
Yeah, well, that was also a very smooth ad read right there. We got it in. Um, But yeah, it's actually like thanks to services like Bitrefill that a lot of people move here because they can live on a Bitcoin standard. So they can essentially not need to worry about having a bank account, and they can pull out cash. They can pay with Bitcoin in many, many places, more and more places, and they can operate on a Bitcoin standard, which is the goal and mission of a lot of Bitcoiners these days. And there are a few communities here where there's complete circular economies. You could go to El Zonte, Bitcoin Beach. You can go to Bitcoin Berlin, which is in the mountains, and you can essentially pay with Bitcoin at any single vendor. Any establishment will accept Bitcoin. So it's pretty neat. I was a Bitcoiner for a long time, but I never experienced what it was like to just use it as a medium of exchange. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty special. So I'd say that's a big draw of El Salvador.
Mhm. Yeah, we did a El Salvador roundtable episode that people can also go check out, and we had on the we've had the Berlin crew on for Nikki and James.
Hmm.
We have one podcast episode with Nikki and James that people can go check out, and then we also had the El Salvador roundtable episode that people can check out. But Jordan, I want to hear about you. So Argentine wife, maybe you could have gone to Milei's Argentina and all the changes that are going on down there, but you decided instead to do El Salvador. These are obviously the two kind of most exciting or rapidly changing countries in Latin America. Why did you choose El Salvador over, say, Argentina?
Well, that's a really interesting topic to explore because I'm a big fan of Malay, and my wife was not. There was, you know how it goes. If you don't understand economics and you don't understand how things work in that realm, then you don't like guys like Millet. He's charismatic, but they've had a lot of just kind of schmooze ball presidents that just kind of mess everything up over and over and over again. So they kind of looked at Millet as another Macri, which was the president before the last one. But anyway, my wife's family right now has not seen any positive changes in their everyday life thanks to Millet. So when we follow all the stuff on Twitter about Milei's new Argentina, we can see the macro effects of what he's doing, I guess. But as far as she's concerned, that when she talks to her aunts, her cousin, her friends down there, like it hasn't trickled down yet to helping everybody in their day to day life. And so I suppose it might remain to be seen. That's not the reason we didn't go down there. It's still kind of if things don't work out here in El Salvador, we will go down there from here. But excuse me, El Salvador has been on my radar for years because Bukele came in, made Bitcoin legal tender, cleaned up the gangs, and then I saw Max Kaiser posting stuff here, and I'm like, wow, what an adventure that would be. And before I started a family, I was just a nomad. I was a traveler, a backpacker, and I just made guerrilla films. I would just make videos of people in their everyday lives. Like, what are you doing? Show us your project. So I thought, how cool would it be to document Max Kaiser's life in El Salvador? So I had that dream about 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, and it just kind of sat on the shelf because I had no way of even trying to make a connection with Max Kaiser, let alone go down to El Salvador knowing no one. And what do I do? So we moved to Hawaii instead. We went to Hawaii, and then we were there for a couple of years, and it just nothing really was working out. So I thought back to El Salvador, like, oh, maybe now it's time to head down there. So long story short, I met my business partner down here in last December. We had known each other from Twitter, and we were like, hey, let's go meet up in real life. So we met up here. We both took a bunch of trips back and forth. And before we knew it, we were deciding to move here to figure out how to get this startup going and start building in El Salvador. And that's what we're doing now. So I guess the roundabout answer to that question is we chose El Salvador because of the opportunity that it seemed to present. We had been coming here, networking, seeing the energy here. The optimism is really strong. There's just a big air of hope. Everyone's very happy here. I've never really experienced that anywhere, to be honest, where people are just optimistic for the future. Like, it's kind of sad to say that, but I haven't really been many places where people are super excited about the future. But this is one of them right now, and I can't really think of many other places that would be like that right now. I've got young kids. I thought, hey, it's probably a good, it's my responsibility for a father to bring my kids, my responsibility as a father, bring my kids somewhere where people are hopeful. The place has an upward trajectory. There might be a good future here. So get some roots, develop some roots here for the kids.
Very nice. And your business partner is Michael Ruiz?
Yes, sir.
Nice. I've been trying to get him on. We haven't made it happen yet.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell him.
So what is SovStudios?
So Sovereignty Studios is at the moment it's essentially a media company, but what we're trying to do is broadcast the renaissance happening here. We call it the bottom up renaissance. What Bukele has done, primarily with the adoption of Bitcoin, but also with his general free market policies and his, I would say there's tax incentives to come innovate here. If you're an AI company, any kind of tech company, this very well could be a new type of Silicon Valley, almost like a new kind of Singapore in Central America here. So Sovereignty Studios came here to document that, to share the stories, like what's being built here, what can the world be inspired with here, what's happening here. And so that's why we spend time with Murph's Life. We spend time with another example is Illuminodes, a guy named Fabian. He is working on a basically decentralized sovereign health identity protocol using Nostr. So you can go to the doctor, and instead of giving all your health information to the insurance networks, you can just give only your data to the doctor who needs to see it instead of sharing it with this $3 trillion industry. That's the type of initiative that is kind of only being built in El Salvador. And so along the way, basically what a guy like that is doing is helping this hospital, their prototype hospital, modernize their systems and get, they were dealing with double bookings, and they just didn't have a modern system for getting their patients into, the appointments and the doctors that were renting the rooms. So now they have a new system that's completely modernized and up to speed, but it just so happens to also use a decentralized protocol for sending the data where it needs to go. So there's initiatives like that. Obviously, there's Bitcoin, people doing all kinds of banking things and ATMs and whatever it is on Bitcoin. There's social experiments like Bitcoin Beach, like Bitcoin Berlin. And so what we're kind of taking up is what they call the social layer of Bitcoin. Is how can the principles of Bitcoin inspire a new society? We would really like to see society grow past this fiat paradigm, which is based on high time preference, like do things for the now, go into debt if you have to, and really just not looking towards the future. What Bitcoin, the mentality that it brings in is like, hey, let's look towards the future so our children can have a good life. Let's try to do things where we're not spending what we don't have. Let's be sustainable and, just kind of things like that. And so what we're doing, this renaissance that we're trying to broadcast, share the stories of, is essentially create a blueprint for places around the world to start developing their own societies that transcend the fiat paradigm. Because
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, the fiat paradigm doesn't work. It's taking us all to disaster, economic ruin, economic collapse. And most people are very unaware that the Federal Reserve just prints more money when it wants to. And in turn, every other economy in the world essentially he feels the repercussions of that because it's the global reserve currency. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Okay. And so, how does Sovereign Studios actually make money? You guys do like film projects, or what do you guys actually do to
So we do film
get?
projects. Well, we do like events, media and events. We hosted our first retreat last month. We're hosting our second one in November, and
Mm,
that is called the Build in El Salvador retreat, and it's basically a kickstart. So anyone that was like me or like Michael, they're like, "Hey, El Salvador seems to have it going on, but what's really going on down there? I want to go check it out." But what do I do? Like what me 2 years ago, I was like, "Hey, I want to go down to El Salvador, but I don't even know where to start. Like I don't even know where to go. I don't want to just be like a tourist for a week. Like I can't just go aimlessly like I used to. I have kids now. I have to come back, to my family. But what if I want to just go spend a week and really get a lot of research done, really see the sites, really get a feel for El Salvador to know if maybe I should start making my plan B or even plan A to move to El Salvador. So this retreat is targeted at people that are seeing what's happened throughout the world. They're seeing what's going on and they're like, okay, I want to go somewhere where my values are actually being lived, where there's other people that I can feel like I'm community with, because everywhere else in the world, I mean, I'll speak for the United States, for example, is everyone's so fragmented with their beliefs, with what they do in their time, with how they live their lives, that it's hard to have a cohesive feeling of community. Now, it obviously exists in some
mm,
places, but here in El Salvador, when all these migrants coming down, all these expats, we all share mostly the same values, which is those of the principles of personal sovereignty. And so once again, Sovereignty Studios aims to document that, it aims to broadcast that, it aims to build community around that, it aims to support entrepreneurs that want to come down here to explore that. Once again, why we do this retreat. We had lots of entrepreneurs, real estate investors, people coming down curious to do something
is
here.
that the one I saw on the mansion on the coast?
Yeah, the Bitcoin Mansion. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, super. It was such a cool retreat. It was so nice, and we'd never done retreats before, but it went so well. Everyone loved it, and Max Kaiser and Stacey Herbert came. We threw our launch party in the middle of it, so we had like this awesome party in the middle where all the retreat guests got to meet our professional network. So anyone we'd ever worked with, we invited to come over for this party. We'll be doing that again in November before the
Mhm.
Adopting Bitcoin conference. So it's just a chance to come check out El Salvador for 4
What
days,
date?
November 10th through the 14th.
What day is the actual kickoff thing?
The retreat is the 10th, and
The
then the
10th.
adopting Bitcoin conference is the 15th and 16th. So the idea is, if you're interested in coming to check out El Salvador and you're into Bitcoin and you want to go to that conference anyway, you can come for a solid week and just have the ultimate experience in Bitcoin country. Come stay at the Bitcoin Mansion, uh, go to Bitcoin Beach. You're going to see El Zonte. You're going to go to Bitcoin Mountain with Murph's Life, and then go to the Adopting Bitcoin conference after. It's kind of like a compacted way to just have the ultimate El Salvador Bitcoin experience. But anyway, that's how we really intend to generate revenue here, is to show people around, have a network where people can tap into. Because really is like, if we want to see this world change for the better, we got to move fast, and there's lots of builders out there. There's lots of people out there that want to do the work, that are ready. They have the vision, they have the skill, but uniting them and getting a proper team, a system, a network, whatever you want to call it, to actually create and manifest the tools
Mhm.
that are necessary is, it's a project, it's a process. So we're
Sure.
trying to really kind of wrap up that message as the Sovereignty Studios brand in order to start building something in real life. So
Yeah.
I'm a little scattered right now with how I'm telling my stories, but I hope you follow.
No, it's all good. And so I saw one of these interviews that you posted with Murph's Life. It said like building Bitcoin Mountain, the citadel of Bitcoin Mountain, something like that. So is Murph rebranding his farm thing as Bitcoin Mountain, or what's Bitcoin Mountain?
So Murph's farm thing is Murph's farm thing, but there's other land up there, and there's lots more going on, or
Hmm.
that could be going on. And so he's not really a hardcore Bitcoiner, but he believes in Bitcoin. He sees the importance. He recognizes why it's so important. So he has retirement funds for his workers in Bitcoin. He's going to have everything he's building there going to accept Bitcoin. There's going to be a circular economy, and so he wants to attract other Bitcoin builders that want to come essentially create our own new Bitcoin beach, except we're going to call it Bitcoin Mountain. So, for example, that video you saw was me and Michael discussing, like, well, what if we went in and bought some land next to his farm and we created our thing? All of that together is still Bitcoin Mountain. That's the idea.
Okay, cool. So early stages on Bitcoin Mountain.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, Murph really wants to lean into that. And I think it's kind of cool because who doesn't want to be a part of something awesome from the ground up? And we see how successful Bitcoin Beach was. People are seeing the success of Bitcoin Berlin. People are just starting to see the success of El Salvador. So it's like, hey, I'm ready to leave where I'm from. I just got off a call with some people that wanted to come to the retreat yesterday. They're in Hawaii. They have a beautiful life there, but similar as me. They see the writing on the wall. They're like, we got to get out of here, sell all our real estate, and probably go to El Salvador. Maybe not, but let's go check it out at least. And so they can't go to the retreat. And back to the question of how we're going to make money, they actually asked us to host just like a private white glove tour for them. So we're seeing if that's in our wheelhouse. But it's a really interesting demographic of people we're speaking to. And I don't know if anyone has ever spoken to that demographic before in the way we are. And so we're attracting just really high caliber people that want to come be a part of what's going on in El Salvador.
Hmm. Could I double click on that in terms of the feeling that people are experiencing and the writing on the wall, as you put it? What does that mean? What is the writing on the wall in the U.S. that people are seeing and experiencing?
I think there's just a lot of societal decay. I think the values and morals we grew up with are disappearing. Maybe some of them for the better, but some of them not so much. The I remember when I was like 15 years old, how much money $20 was, and like
Hmm.
now, how much is $20? I mean, if you're in the States, it's not much. So inflation is going on. You just see social unrest a lot, even if it's just online, but you just see a lot. As I just equate it to, like, everything seems like it's going downhill. Like, since I became an adult, everything just seems to be going downhill with a lot of metrics to prove it. And I'm not the only one that sees that, that's experiencing that. I mean, imagine if you're living in one of these big cities right now in the United States, and you're having to deal with a lot of that. There's just a lot of dismay. There's a lot of disappointment. There's a lot of like, oh shoot, like what am I going to do next? Because this isn't it. This isn't it. And if you're my age, I'm 36. It's more pressing to take action than it is if you're my dad. If you're 65 or whatever, you're like, yeah, well, my time's over. I'll be okay. And yeah, he probably will be okay. But I've got kids to think about. We got to move on to this next rung. I mean, look at history. Empires end. Empires end. They do what they can to squeeze the wealth out of their citizens, and then warlords take over. Mafias take over. You could argue mafias have already taken over the U.S. government, and they're doing that right now, which is why the inflation's starting to go through the roof, which is why all the rules and taxes don't make any sense for the enrichment of your citizens. It's just there to steal from them, to squeeze them of everything they got. And yeah, so we have hope that El Salvador will offer a new way. We'll see how that goes.
This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Crema Social. Crema Social is like TikTok for international dating. It's an app you can download right now on your phone, and 3 out of 4 people on Crema are single women. The app was founded in Colombia, so unsurprisingly, there are a lot of Latinas on the app, by the way. So how does it work? Crema Social is a social meal experience where you invite a hot girl for a lunch date via video call and food delivery. New concept, so you'll have to try it out for yourself, but this is probably the best way to meet Latinas before you visit the country. So if you're in Latin America or planning to visit Latin America, download Crema Social now and start getting dates right away. There will be a link in the description to download, or just search Crema Social on your favorite app store. Have fun, guys. This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by BitRefill. BitRefill is the best way to spend your crypto in Latin America. Purchase gift cards or mobile refills from more than 3,500 brands in 186 countries instantly, safely, and privately. You can also apply the code MyLatinLife at checkout to get 10% back on your first purchase. Go to bitrefill.com for more information. This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Job Stacking. If you are a remote or hybrid worker looking to maximize your earning potential, then Rolf Haltza, the author of Job Stacking, guarantees you'll be able to double your income. This is the exact system Rolf has used to take his own income and those of many others beyond $20K a month. So what is job stacking? It's this idea of working multiple remote jobs. You might have heard Rolf, he's worked 5, 7, even 9 remote jobs at the same time before. And by the way, job stacking works equally well for non-technical roles. So no, it's not just for the nerds. So if you're ready to job stack, then book a discovery call with Job Stacking and see how they can double your income in just 9 weeks. In the show notes in the description, there will be a link where you can book a call directly on the Calendly of Job Stacking and be talking with them as early as tomorrow about how to double your income as quickly as possible. And I'm surprised people in Hawaii feel that way, because I thought it might be a little bit, what's the word, like separated from the decay in mainland USA. Aren't all the rich people moving to Hawaii or something?
I mean, I wasn't rich. I moved to like the poorest part of Hawaii, but it was still paradise. And I was just like, who cares about money? Who cares? I'm in paradise. Like, what else do I need? But I didn't take into account the upbringing of my children and what they would learn and growing up in an area like that. As far as the rich people go, maybe it's something to do with their wealth. Maybe it's something to do with property taxes. You hold your wealth in Bitcoin, there's no property tax, right? Hold your wealth in a nice house in Kauai, and you're probably paying a pretty penny property taxes. So I can't speak for wealthy people, especially in Hawaii, but there's all like COVID. During COVID, Hawaii was really bad. You had to either have a test with proof of negative COVID or the vaccine to get in for like a long time. I feel like it was like a year. You had to prove all that just to go to
Damn.
Hawaii. And
Yeah.
so if they were doing that for something like COVID, like imagine when the next thing rolls around, like that's how they do things there. I'm like, I don't want to be stuck there forever. If I choose not to follow their rules, I don't want to be, I mean, I would get stuck there, no problem, but my kids are still young. They want to see their grandparents, et cetera, et cetera. So just realize like that's not a place I want to be as the world is in kind of a tumultuous phase right now.
Hmm. Well, let's talk about what it's like for kids in El Salvador. I'm genuinely curious, kind of what your observations are. So you're public on Twitter about how you have two young ones. Can I ask how old they are, just for context?
3 and 4.5.
Okay, so they're still kind of getting more
They're so young.
conscious, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, what's kind of been your observations with the first 3-4 months in El Salvador, and maybe what's different from the U.S. or how raising kids in El Salvador is?
First off, I'm so surprised at how I don't know if it's a Central America thing. I don't know if it's an El Salvador thing because they had such a relationship with the United States over the past few decades because of people migrating there due to all the problems. But I feel like I'm in a Latin American version of California here, especially in San Salvador. Like you see Pizza Hut, Wendy's, you see all these places that I try to escape, try to get away from. There's a lot of corporate influence. I live in this little safe suburb right now in a cul-de-sac with a nice little playground and all these other families with kids. It's like, you can hardly even tell which jurisdiction I'm in unless, Um, but as far as having kids goes, they go to a good school. It's cheaper. It's much cheaper than any good school would cost in the United States. If you don't want to go to private school, they're
Mhm.
going to a nice school. They have friends in the neighborhood. There's a lot of English speakers in our neighborhood. Not a lot, but enough to have friends. We live in a very
But
international
don't they
block.
speak Spanish if the mom is Argentine?
Yeah, well, I've been bone to pick with my wife. What happened was my
Not too
son.
late. I mean,
No, no, no. They're speaking Spanish at school. They're learning at school. In fact, it's only been a few months, and my little one, the 3-year-old, she's just like zipping around. So like she just makes up words in Spanish, and the ones she catches, she holds on to. But then she'll talk to her friends, just making up words in Spanish. It's the cutest thing in the world. She's so excited about it. But my older one doesn't care at all. He hates it. He doesn't want to learn Spanish. It's not natural for him to learn it. I guess he's just a little higher, like a little older than like they say until you're 10 years old or something your brain is like primed to keep learning languages,
Mhm.
but he's over 4 and his brain is just not there. So I think maybe around 3 or something when they're still developing the first language it might be even easier to start uh, learning a second one,
Hmm.
but he's having a tougher time.
You
But
got to
anyway, my
implement a rule where the mom only speaks Spanish.
do you have kids?
I may or may not.
Oh, okay, sorry. Well, basically uh at this age with the kids, if they don't understand what's being said, they don't listen or they get upset, and it's just all this energy and all this stress, and it's just like, oh, I don't have time for this. Like we don't have time for this. But what happened was we were in Argentina the first almost like year of my son's life, and all he heard was Spanish. Even I talked to him in Spanish when we were in Argentina. And then we moved to California for a bit once we finally could escape Argentina from COVID. We moved to California for a bit and we were living with my parents. And so my wife was just always speaking English with them. And we started just switching into English. And then by the time my son was talking, we were just speaking English all the time. And my wife was having trouble going back and forth. And then so he just learned English. And then my daughter, my wife was speaking Spanish to my daughter for her first few months and stuff. But then once she started talking, she'd always just respond in English, and then it just kind of fell by the wayside. So yeah, I was always like, "Come on, they have an Argentine wife. They need to be speaking fluent Spanish here. Come on."
Yeah, to me, like the motherly interaction is better in Spanish. It's like, ay, qué bonito. No, no, no. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. It's more childish and like cariñoso, in my opinion.
I agree. I agree, but But yeah,
All right.
so overall, yeah, and we feel really safe in El Salvador. You know, the kids can play outside here and nothing to worry about. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So overall, I like, you know, in Hawaii, it was all volcanic rock everywhere. They go outside, they can fall, they just fall on the rock and, you know, scrape their whole arm and get MRSA or staph or something. Even though it was super safe, like socially, but just the, you know, kids running around on volcanic rock, you're bound. The kids are going to scrape their knees no matter what, right? But scraping your knees in where we lived in Hawaii just turns out to be a bigger deal than here.
Mm,
Yeah.
cool. And what about like the locals? Do you find that? Well, do you find it's a more family friendly society, El Salvador, compared to say California?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, Latin America in general, in my experience, like, you know, you're pregnant, you go to the front of the line. You have little kids, you get to go to the front of the line. Like things like that. Like people are just very mindful, conscious, and respectful about that. But
Hmm.
meanwhile, in the States, like when we came back, we took a trip to Argentina last year to visit family. And my daughter, it was a red eye. They didn't sleep well. My daughter, we flew in through like Texas, and then we had to go through security again after customs. My daughter was screaming the whole way through the whole line through TSA, like bloody murder, like really bad. Like she wanted my wife to hold her. My wife was tired, said no, and she's screaming, screaming, screaming. And everyone's just looking away, like they don't notice, like the people that work at the airport. That's happening in Argentina. There's a worker of the airport coming up to you, going, "Here, come to the front of the line," like right away, even if they're not screaming. Like that's my experience in Argentina. But there you are in the United States. There's no respect at all for, you know, like young families. So that's like kind of built into the, I don't know what you'd call it, the institutions, the
Yeah.
bureaucracy. And then otherwise, like, you know, the first words my daughter learned were "que bonita," "que hermosa," because that's what everyone always says to her when they
Right.
see her. And so she learned those words quick, and everyone's always. I don't know if this is universal, but I just feel like once people see I have kids here, they just give me respect. You know they most people understand what it's like to deal with kids and have to raise kids and all that. So you just get respect. And like I said, that could be universal. It probably is, but I feel in it a lot here, just when we go out and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And what's life like in San Salvador? Because it's funny, it's like the Bitcoin community, as it's described, is a little bit spread out, right? You got the beach, you got San Salvador, Murph is over near Santa Ana, Berlin is like the other direction, away from Santa Ana, you know, like to the southeast, I guess you would say.
Yep.
What's it like specifically in San Salvador, the capital?
Well, we're just a bit south of it. So we're in like the perfect spot because we're right off the highway to go to the beach. It's like 30 minutes, not even 30 minutes to get to the beach. And we're right before all the ugly traffic starts in the city because San Salvador traffic is absolutely horrible. It's absolutely horrible. Like we'll only drive through town like on Sundays maybe. But yeah, so where we live, it's great. It's relaxing. Like I said, it's kind of a suburb. So we can get to everything everywhere we need to go without having to go into the crazy city, and yet we're still close enough to the crazy city. So if there's an event going on or something to do, we can get there. We need to network, whatever. And then we're
Hmm.
close enough to the beach where we can go there when we want. Like we really like where we're located.
Hmm.
And, you know, we couldn't even look at the beach. It was really hot, humid. It was too hot for me. And also, there's no good schools for little ones there, or just in general. That's changing. I do think they're going to start putting in little schools like that. Like the one we have, they might start our school, they might start a new branch down by the beach because there's a lot of their target market there. But yeah, we're like 10 minutes from our school. So my wife drops them off in the morning and she's picking them up now. And it's just like, we live in a nice little bubble here, and our neighbors are from all over Latin America. We have a few Salvadorian neighbors. There's Nicaraguans, there's Venezuelans, there's Ecuadorians, there's Colombians, Argentines, there's some Americans. So it's kind of a cool international neighborhood too.
Pretty cool. And I'm sure you've been into downtown where the library is and the main square
Yeah,
and everything.
I'm not a big fan. We take the guests there on the retreat. I think the most interesting part of downtown is seeing how what it was and what it's going to be. because you can see all the dilapidated downtown colonial style architecture,
Mhm.
and it's just destroyed. It's ugly. It's just bad. But then you see what's being renovated, the National Palace and the cathedral, and the library is brand new. But you see them doing renovations, and I think it's going to be unrecognizable in a few years. So I do find that part really interesting. But otherwise, I don't go downtown for any reason at all.
Okay. And usually every little barrio will have a church and a plaza and, like ice cream vendors in the plaza and all that type of stuff. Do you have that near where you're at?
No, because most, at least modern or contemporary style neighborhoods, are all private, residencial. And so they're just like these private communities with their own little world inside. I'm hoping they put like a corner store in or something, but I don't know if they will. But there's a little village not too far where they have all that, you know. Um, but yeah, no, it's really interesting. I've never been anywhere before where every roughly every like middle class place to live is all private barrio, it's private security.
Because I guess that kind of mostly got created before Bukele. Like now, you don't even need to
Yeah.
be in a privada because it's so safe everywhere now. So I feel like the privadas sort of lose their value a bit in like a safe scenario. But I mean,
The analogy I've heard, which I think is a great one, is they're moving from being a low trust society to a high trust society.
yep,
So we're in the middle of the transition period here. Like, there's guys walking around my neighborhood with shotguns, and it's just like, why? I know why, and I know why that's still happening here. Do they need to be here? I don't know. Do I mind? Not really. I got young kids. I'm like, great, like let these guys, like, they're here to protect me. That's their job. I don't feel threatened by them. I know that random cars aren't coming in to the to the residents, to the neighborhood. So I'm like, it doesn't really bother me. It maybe it took some time because it was just weird and off putting in the beginning, but it actually doesn't bother me at all. Funny enough.
hmm common Latin America thing, honestly.
Yeah,
Maybe
just another.
Argentina
Yeah.
is a bit of an exception, but um,
Well, even where we would stay in Argentina, like what I mean, where we stayed when we were trapped there in 2020 was a private area. And then we would stay when we went to visit. We stayed in a public area, which is still like kind of in a nice part of town. And my wife was like hanging out in the living room with her cousins at like I don't know 8 p.m. Not that late, 7 p.m. And while they were inside, someone smashed their back window and stole their spare tire, like from the street. And this is in
yeah,
like a pretty nice part of town, like suburb, and like it's not private though, because that's just what happens in Argentina these days.
yeah. I
So
heard it. Crime got a little bit bad. It's so expensive now. Um, well, so I guess you got a car in El Salvador. Was it easy to get a car and everything?
we're renting one.
Hmm.
Yeah, we're renting one monthly, and I don't know. It was so annoying to sell my truck in Hawaii after we moved. We didn't realize we were moving when we left. We thought we were just going to be gone for a few months, and then we ended up just kind of being done. We still have to go back and get our stuff, but it was just so annoying to sell my car there and everything that goes into it. And so here, if something goes wrong with the car or there's an accident, like the owner takes care of it, right? Like I'll pay the deductible if something's my fault or whatever. But when it needs an oil change, if something happens to the tire, like whatever it is, the owner takes care of it because I'm renting it. I don't have to pay the insurance. I don't have to deal with any of that. So I'm kind of thinking I might just keep renting a car, and maybe we're giving it a year here. So once our lease expires here, before that, we'll kind of evaluate if we want to stay, if it's going to be worth staying. Maybe after that, if we decide to stay longer term, we'll get a car. But we're renting one peer to peer, and it's absolutely fantastic
Nice with Bitcoin.
with Bitcoin.
Speaking of 1 year, the audience might not know this, but for Latinos, for Latin American citizens, there's a 1 year path to citizenship in El Salvador, as given by the Constitution.
Well, so yes, yes. Well, but it's what no one can get clarity on. I've talked to various lawyers. They're all lawyers, and they all have a different opinion. Is it because in the law it says that origen Hispanoamerica, so if
Uh-huh.
you're of
De
Hispanic American
origen.
origin.
Uh-huh.
So some people think that if you have a Mexican passport, you'll be able to get it in a year. My lawyer said no, only if you were born in Latin America. So my son was born in Argentina. He's on that fast track. It's actually 2 years, I believe. It's you have to have 1 year of temporary residency and then 1 year of residency, and then you get it. It's not just like right away, but it's better than like I think it's 5 years or something.
Right.
But my daughter was born in the States, so even though she has her Argentine passport, she would not qualify.
Yeah, might be debatable on that one because it's not like she naturalized, right? Like she got it from birth. So,
But she wasn't
um,
born there. So that's the thing. It very well could just be one of those Latin America things where it depends who processes your application.
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
we'll find out.
All right. So it sounds like half the family might be fast track, half not. We'll see. You're like the perfect
Yeah.
case study.
Well, yeah, and also because I'm married to her, if she were to get that, then I think I would be able to get mine like a year or two sooner since we're
Right.
married.
Right.
Something
Maybe it's
like
like
that.
3 years instead of five or something.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but if she had that citizenship, it'd be a lot simpler. But I'm not too concerned. We just got our residency. We're waiting on it in the mail for it, but it all went through. And we'll just keep following the rules, keep renewing it, and if we stay here and we deserve the citizenship, great. If we leave, then that's that.
Yeah. I think people would be surprised to hear that, though. It's like only 1 year in El Salvador for people born in Latin America, El Salvador passport. I guess you're
But I
saying
think
that's
it's
1 year
you have
permanent?
to have you, but you have to have if I remember correctly, but I'm pretty sure it's 1 year with a proper visa. And before you can
Uh-huh.
get the proper visa, you need a 1 year temporary visa. So it's actually 2 years.
Okay.
Or something like that. I don't think it's only 1 year though. But whoever's listening, that you might research, do your own research. Don't listen to me.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Well, pretty fast track one way or the
it's
other.
fast tracked, yeah. Or you pay $1 million, and you
Yeah.
can get it that way too.
Yeah. That's what Jordan did. No.
Yeah, right. It's crazy though. I mean, I don't know if you ever heard of the book The Sovereign Individual.
Of course.
Yeah. So, I mean, he talks about how you could basically just, you're shopping for countries are just shopping for sovereign individuals to like, hey, come live here. Hey, look at this offer. Oh, hey, buy your own passport. Hey, we won't confiscate your personal property. Hey. And El Salvador seems to be the first company or country really, really taking that path. So it's cool. It's neat. I mean, Salvadorians now have a passport worth $1 million. That's got to feel good.
And you're meeting people from all over, right? Like, are you seeing lots of Europeans and Canadians, Americans moving to El Salvador?
Yeah, lots of Canadians, man. The writing on the wall for them was a lot sooner. I mean, it wasn't writing on the wall. It was like coming to reality. And so there's a lot of Canadians here escaping the regime from up there. There's a good amount of Americans. I would say there's more Canadians, but there's a good amount of yeah. I mean, even Murph's Canadian, right? Like he spent a lot of time in the States, but he's
He's
Canadian.
dual. He's dual. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's not here because of Canada. Everyone else is here because of Canada. Uh, and lots of American. I do meet Europeans, not so many, but there definitely are. They're definitely here. It's just very international. A lot of people from the UK. They also see what's going on. It's pretty strong there. So they came here. But yeah, definitely a lot of international. But like I said earlier, everyone with similar shared values, everyone excited with the spirit of community. It's just really cool. And Salvadorians are amazing. Like we have a lady that comes to help us, clean and cook and just help laundry and stuff. And she's like part of the family, and she has her daughter and come play with my kids, and it's like I feel like Salvadorians are they're very grateful and humble people
Hmm.
in my experience with them so far. And it's just nice to be around that. And everyone's like we said earlier, everyone's optimistic and hopeful for the future because of the dark times they're coming out of. So it's an interesting time to get to know this culture for sure, but it's also encouraging.
Are there any aspects of like community that you think would be important to highlight to incentivize people to get down there? Like, what does community look like? We got Thursday night happy hours, or what do we got going on?
We got meetups all the time, like Sovereignty Studios. We host a meetup like every other Friday if we're free, and like all these people show up. Not because we did a great job marketing it, not because we've like flushed it all out. No, it's because people are excited to come meet other people in the same kind of realm. And so you have Bitcoin meetups on, I think, Fridays at Bitcoin Beach. You got meetups there. Bitcoin Berlin has meetups. There's a farmers market every 2 weeks. There's a community down by the beach. There's a beach clubhouse where a bunch of people like live in that community, and they all show up every afternoon around 4 or 5, and people just showing up and hanging out. Just kind of like this. I guess how I would explain it is people excited to see you. Like there's a communal space in some form or another, and people show up and they're excited to talk and commune, and I guess they call it in church like have fellowship. Where you're in where I was in the United States, Hawaii was pretty good with community, but in California no one cares about you and your family. It's just everyone's out for their own interest, and no one really if no one really has a like a fallback. Like your community is supposed to be your like web, right? Like the government's not supposed to take care of you. Like you're supposed to take care
Hmm.
of yourself and your neighbors, and that's the
Hmm.
resilience. But that's just kind of gone in North American culture, but it's being built up here by North Americans, and it also kind of exists with the Salvadorians here already because that's kind of what they had to do for a long time. So, I mean, I'm not qualified to speak about that too much from their perspective yet, but I do plan on investigating further. But there is just an air of supporting each other, doing things together, working hard. Like, hey, together we can do this. That's what when I say community. That's kind of, I guess, my interpretation of what I feel here.
Yeah, no, the
That makes
energy is
sense.
definitely a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, and no, and community is a thing too. I mean, I definitely feel like we lost that a bit, and Latin America has it more for sure.
and they always
Um,
have. Yeah.
I'm sure people want to know about cost of living as well. I know it's very different in, say, Berlin is probably much cheaper than San Salvador. And I'm guessing maybe San Salvador is cheaper than Bitcoin Beach. But like, how much should people budget for a family of four? Um,
Dude, it's crazy. I mean, it's so hard. I mean, we're living more. I mean, for me, it's lavish. I'm not a very lavish person, but like the way we live here, like I said, we have help. My kids go to like a private preschool thing, and we're renting a car. We're renting this place in the suburbs. Uh, People hear what we pay for rent, and they're like, "Wow, you're getting ripped off." But this whole neighborhood is the same price, and it's full. Uh, it's literally probably 4 or 5 times the cost of what it would be in Berlin. At least 3 times the cost. Bitcoin Beach would be pretty expensive, probably more expensive than this. Anywhere along the beach could be more expensive than this, really. But even that beach clubhouse I told you about earlier, it's cheaper. It's maybe half the cost of where we are, and you're at the beach. It's really interesting time in their economy, that's for sure. But we live in a brand new house. We're the first people to live here. We're renting it. Um, I would say it's cheaper than. Let me put it this way: what we pay for rent here is more than we rent out our house in Hawaii for.
Come on, just give us a number
Upwards of 2 grand per month.
for the rent. You're paying 2 grand a month rent.
Upwards,
What does that mean, upwards?
more than 2 grand, but
More than
less than
two.
three.
Okay.
And this is in the suburbs of San Salvador. It's nice. Don't get me wrong. It's really nice. It's clean. There's a nice little jungle behind the house. And I would say this is kind of standard if you want to have these living standards. If you want to have rough it a little more, you go down to the beach. It's hotter. You need to have the AC on all day. You're gonna be yeah, and it's just cheaper. I mean, you go to Berlin in the mountains, and I think you could find a room or something for less than $500 a month. It's crazy. So I've never paid this much. I've never had this big of a expenses like in my budget. Like my budget has never been this like I don't know what the term to use is, but it's very expensive to live here, far more than it was in Hawaii. Funny enough, but
Really?
yeah, but we didn't live the same way, right? There wasn't preschool there. I owned my car. We didn't have to pay rent, I guess. The food is more expensive in Hawaii, obviously, but there's just less things to spend money on. Here, when you're living in a city and stuff, there's just always more things to spend money on. And then, yeah, I mean, I could just go on and on, but like my kids have to bring their own lunch to school because of allergies and stuff. And so we have to cook exactly what the cafeteria is serving every day. Like my wife has to cook exactly the menu of whatever it is, just minus the allergies. And family of four, there's a lot of laundry, there's a lot of dirt that comes in on the street, blah blah blah. So normally I was like, oh, we don't need help. Why would you hire help? But like I see what happened. Like it's the first time we've hired help around the house, and there's so much more that can get done. There's so much more time and energy to do it. So it's like, is that something I can really afford? Probably not. But do I like the new energy it brings into the house? Yes, and it's worth it. So
Yeah, no, help in Latin America is sick because in the US, help is so absurdly expensive that
yep,
you have to be super rich or making super money to justify help, right? Because it might
yep,
be more than 5 grand a month or something. But in Latin America, I mean, maybe it's different in El Salvador, but in Mexico or Colombia or whatever, it's $400 a month, maybe.
yeah. We
So
pay less than 400 a month, and it's more than she would get working with most people, and it's half days. Um, and I mean, yes, it's not enough to live on, but it's only half the day, so she could have other clients in the afternoon. And like, yeah, no, it's absolutely insane. I mean, the amount of money it costs to live here and eat and stuff, and the amount of money Salvadorians make, it's I don't really know how it works, and I don't know what the plan is with that, like with Bukele and stuff. But it's kind of scary. You hear these people just making $400 or $500 a month or less, and how they survive. I don't know. It's crazy.
I think a lot of them own their own homes, or they live in multi-generational homes where
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
not paying rent.
That's the only way I can see it working out. Yeah.
Okay, so I have heard it's a little bit more expensive than than people maybe realize or whatever. But I don't know. I'd be curious how it stacks up with say Costa Rica and Panama.
Everyone says I haven't been to Costa Rica since like right before I guess the boom, and I don't know. I wasn't renting and stuff back then, but I've heard yeah, it's on par with Costa Rica right now. If not, maybe just a little less. I don't know. Panama I've never been to. I guess it is
Panama's
probably.
cheaper than Costa Rica.
All I know is that it's way cheaper in Argentina right now, and we obviously like the Argentine culture and how they do things there a lot. I would say we like it more than here. But the opportunity, it's like these opportunities only come by maybe once, if maybe twice if you're lucky in life. So it's kind of like this was it. Am I gonna rule? Is my life gonna be ruled by the money we have to spend, the chip out of our savings to go have this experience and maybe build something really cool at a time where this country is open to it? Or are we just going to go to somewhere else just because we can save money and not live in that feeling of hope and optimism, like I explained earlier? So,
Cool. You got any monkeys or toucans or anything in the jungle behind you?
no, not in ours. Just a lot of beautiful birds. There are monkeys somewhere, but not in this part, not by the city.
Yeah, we get where I'm at. We got parrots, no toucans, but we got. I think there are toucans in Mexico, obviously, but we got like parrots and like all different types of stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah. Are you in Mexico or do you
Yeah,
not
I'm in
say
Mexico
that?
at the moment.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
yeah.
I spend a lot of time in Mexico, man. I love Mexico. I miss Mexico. It's such a broad and diverse country. There's so much there.
To me, El Salvador is like safe, optimistic Mexico. You know what I mean? Because it's like it's the same kind of climate and everything. You know, mountains, coffee, beach, all that type of stuff. Except it's safe and growing. So there's that. Um, cool, man. Well, we're definitely coming up on time. I'm gonna get down there probably second half of November. That's my goal. I might come like right after the adopting Bitcoin thing.
All right.
Um, so uh, so I'm glad we got to do this.
Yeah,
and
let me know.
make the
Let me know
connection
when you're
first.
here.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely want to do a meetup or something. Yeah, why don't you take this moment to, share a final message with the audience, how they can get involved, all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, check me out, Jordan Urbs on X. I post a lot about living here and my observations and things like that. Sovereignty Studios, we're building a network, we're building a community. So if you're somewhat interested, check out the SovStudios Twitter account. You can also go to sovereigntystudios.com and you can see what we kind of offer. But from the retreat to we have a community, a free community. We do a weekly conference call to come ask questions or whatever about El Salvador. And yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, I think a lot of people right now are really fascinated with what's happening in El Salvador, and they're attracted to what life could be like and the opportunities that could present themselves here. And if you find yourself in that camp, definitely come. Yeah, just come say hi in the community, and just click around in there and come to a call, and maybe there's some synergy there. But yeah, I guess that's kind of it. Check out the retreat. I mean, this is probably going to come out too late, but November 10th is the retreat, and it's going to be a cool opportunity to come check things out here as well. So, yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, this should come out before then. It should be like last week of October, first week of November. Maybe I'll flip the order so we can, so people still have time to book a flight and get down there.
Yeah, it's really funny because like the people going to adopting Bitcoin already have their flights. So it's a question of do they want to come bad enough to figure out, change their flights? And then other people are like, well, you have to plan a retreat 6 months in advance. People got to mark their calendars. But there seems to be a certain crowd that has that lifestyle freedom to just decide to pack up and leave next week. So,
That's me. That's me.
all right.
Okay. They call you Jordan down there?
um, they should, but I think they call me Jordan. They use the
Jordan.
J. Yeah.
Jordan. You're getting your Jordan. Cool. Awesome. Well, all the links will be in the description of the video. People can check out Jordan on Twitter, get connected there. Check out Sovereignty Studios, all the amazing things happening in El Salvador. This has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Again, our guest today, Jordan Urbs. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. We put out 2 episodes a week with amazing guests like Jordan, all podcast platforms, all that good stuff. Thanks again to Jordan for joining us and for the audience for listening. Ciao for now. Hey guys, quick note at the end of the episode here. If you made it this far, you might be interested in working with My Latin Life personally to make progress on your internationalization plan. So whether the next step for you is getting residency in Latin America, lowering your taxes, choosing the best country, maybe a little birth tourism, whatever the next step is for you, of course, My Latin Life can help. We've helped people in their 20s, their 40s, their 60s, because I truly believe that Latin America has something to offer people at every stage of life. So if you want to become our VIP client, if you want to work with Vance, myself directly, book a call. There will be a link in the description. There will be a small fee for the initial consultation, and we do that to filter out the time wasters and focus on the best of the best clients. But if you're listening to this podcast and you made it all the way through the episode, I know you're the best of the best. But we're ready to work with you. So book that call. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the My Latin Life podcast, and we'll catch you in the next one.